Yes, the Children's Ministry Security Briefing begins now. Thank you for taking the time to watch this important video. Thank you even more for serving in our Kid Street Children's Ministry here at Triad Baptist Church. Our mission is that we want every child who comes through our doors to feel loved, come to know Christ, and find a place where they can grow through life-changing and fun experiences. However, we have a responsibility to do this in an environment that is both safe and secure. The guidelines that I am about to share with you have been designed not only to help our kids be safe, but also to protect you as well. We not only want to prevent any negative situation from occurring with our children, but also to protect our volunteers from any false accusations which can be the result of not following these guidelines. What I'm about to share with you are not just tips. They are not suggestions. They are guidelines that must be followed by every volunteer in our children's ministry. Failure to follow these guidelines can result in a volunteer being lovingly and graciously being asked to serve in another area of the church where the risk to kids, volunteers, and liability to the church as a whole is not as high. Thank you for listening carefully and making every effort to be mindful of these guidelines. Let's get started. The first is probably the most important, and it is what we simply call the never alone policy. Under no circumstances are you ever to allow a situation where you are alone with the child. Should you ever find a situation developing where you would be alone with the child, you should do whatever it takes to prevent this from happening. For example, perhaps kids are being picked up and there will soon be only one child left and the other volunteer says they have to leave. You should ask that volunteer to stay, ask another parent to stay, or move with the last child out into the hallway as you wait for the final parent so you are around other adults. The point is, do whatever it takes to make sure you are never alone with the child. Always make sure that there are at least two adults and that you are in clear view of other adults whenever you are with a child. This is not only for the protection of the child so that they are never at risk, but is also to protect you and make it impossible for you ever to be accused of inappropriate conduct with a child. There can never be any exceptions to this rule. I am sure you have heard of tragic situations in the news involving staff or volunteers at churches acting inappropriately with children. In these stories, this rule has always been broken. That is why no exceptions can ever be made and why we must take action if this rule is violated. Thank you for taking this seriously. Next is the principle of appropriate touch. As we interact with children, we must always be wise in our physical contact. Please understand, appropriate affection is important. We want kids to feel loved and accepted. High fives, fist bumps, hugs, pats on the back, and other forms of casual affection are fine. But as kids get older, hugs shift to the side. Avoid having kids sitting on laps, riding piggyback, or sitting on shoulders. We want to always be above reproach in our physical contact with children. If in doubt, don't, or feel free to ask. This includes that we never use physical discipline in correcting children. Even if a child is your own, do not use physical discipline, as observers may not know that that is your child. Again, this is not only to protect the children, but to protect you from anyone being concerned with your contact with those children. If you ever have a concern about someone's contact with children, never hesitate to talk to children's ministry staff. They will listen and deal with it confidentially. Better to report it and have it end up being nothing than to wish you had later. We are happy to coach individuals in appropriate conduct. A person will not automatically be removed. Sometimes they just need some guidance, and your confidential input is helpful. Next, as we interact and have fun leading and teaching kids, please always be mindful of safety. There are two questions that you should always be asking yourself. The first is this activity safe? Obviously, we are always trying to make sure that the activities we are doing will not hurt a child. But just as important is the second question. Does this activity look safe? Sometimes what we are doing may be perfectly safe, but it may not look safe to an observer. Always remember that perception is reality to most observers. There are many times that we choose not to do something because we do not want others to be uneasy with what we're doing, especially parents. Injuries do happen, and when they do, always report them to your supervisor, no matter how small the injury. If the skin is broken, then an accident report should be filled out. The parent should always be informed, regardless of how big or little the injury is. We want to always inform a parent about an incident, rather than have them discover a boo-boo when they get home and wonder what happened and why they weren't notified. Parents are understanding and appreciative when we are upfront about accidents. Next, I would like to talk about the importance of those security stickers. Those stickers are very important and are the cornerstone of our secure check-in system. First of all, no child should ever be admitted into a classroom without a check-in sticker. If a child does not have a sticker, they should not be accepted into the classroom. Please kindly ask the parent to go check in or register at the Kid Street Welcome Center. One easy way to make sure children have a name tag is to make a habit of greeting them by name. As you do so, note any special information on the child's name tag. There may be allergy information that is very important. We do not want to cause an allergic reaction during snack time. Lastly, and this is perhaps the most important part of our secure check-in system, no child should ever be released to an adult without that adult having the matching security tag. Knowing that parent is not an acceptable exception. You must check the tag every time. If a parent does not have the tag, you may not release the child. Smile, be polite, but stick to the policy. No excuses. Kindly send them back to the Kid Street Welcome Center, and the checkpoint staffer will resolve whatever the issue may be. They can determine who the authorized pickup adult is and reprint pickup tags. A classroom teacher simply does not have the authority to bypass this policy. Only the checkpoint staff can do this. Again, this is for your protection as well as the child's protection. You do not want to be the person who released a child into the custody of an adult who did not have legal permission to pick up that child. We understand this can be awkward and inconvenient, but far less awkward than finding out later that you were used by someone to take a child illegally. You do not know what is going on in the home, or if there is a legal issue or a restraining order. Churches are one of the primary places that children are abducted by an estranged parent, because churches too often value friendliness over security. We simply will not make that mistake. I don't mean to frighten you, but it only takes one lawsuit to close the doors of a church. We have to have a sober understanding of the seriousness of this issue. When we start making exceptions on an individual basis, based on personal knowledge, we not only open ourselves up to being vulnerable, but what we are saying to parents who see the exception being made is this: we have a big hole in our security program. We don't want that. Thanks for ensuring that we follow this policy across the board every time to protect every child. Finally, I want to encourage you to count, count, and count. As children's ministry leaders, you should always know the number of children that are in your care. Constantly be counting as children are regularly being added to your room. In the case of an emergency, you will not have time to count during an evacuation. So you'll want to know how many children are in your care at all times, especially if you're transporting children to another location during class time. Count before you go. Stop and count in the middle of transition, and then count again when you reach your destination. Do the same thing on the way back. You honestly cannot count too many times. A leader should be able to ask you at any time how many children you have, and you should be able to answer. And if your class is on the move and a parent wants to pick up their child during the trip, kindly remind them that they will need to do so after you reach your destination. Trying to match up tags and corral the rest of the class is simply not a good idea. Thank you for your focused attention to these important details. I know this is a lot to digest. Let me encourage you to re-watch this video so you are familiar with this policy and these guidelines. You are responsible to know and follow them. Make sure that you have also read and signed your children's ministry policy, which goes into much greater detail. In closing, when parents drop off their children in our children's ministry program, they are entrusting us with their greatest treasure. We need to accept that trust with the highest sense of stewardship and take it very seriously. Hey, children's ministry is incredibly fun, but it also is super serious business too. Thank you for the love and care and heart and preparation and effort and creativity and seriousness that you put into ministering to the kids who come to our church. Let's all work together to ensure that Kid Street is always a loving, safe, and secure place where kids can come to know Jesus and grow in their knowledge of Him.
Mr. Tim, can you hear me? Over.
Yes, the children's ministry security briefing is concluded.